Joining me now is Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen Polling. He'll be with us as a keynote speaker coming up Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th, along with Gordon Chang, Sidney Powell, the man that brought the 5 red heifers to Israel, Dr. Andy Woods, Chris Martinson. We're also going to have with us Dr. Lana Hadia Maramonde, Alex Newman, quite the lineup, live in person Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. You can still register worldviewstore.com. If you can't make it here in beautiful and safe Collierville, Tennessee, we are not Memphis, folks. We're in Collierville, okay? If you cannot make it, you can live stream it if you have a Vault membership, worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Mark joins us today to talk about the murder, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the trends that he and I both have been studying and tracking, as well as another organization that seemed to tell us back in April 7th, 2025 of this year, that there was a growing acceptance to the idea of murdering people that you disagree with politically. He joins us now. Mark, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us, and we're looking forward to having you with us here in the Mid-South, October 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, it'll be great. Looking forward to it. Got to book my flight today.
Well, let's do it. Let's get her done. Yeah. All right, here, let's take a look at this. This is the National Contagion Research Institute and Assassination Culture. Notice it was put out April 7th, 2025. How burning Teslas and killing billionaires became a meme aesthetic for political violence. And I'm going to highlight this one right here because this is one that some folks are talking about today. Justified to murder Elon Musk and President Trump, respectively. Murder justification, 31% and 38% of respondents stated it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk and President Trump, respectively. These effects were driven by respondents that self-identified as left of center, with 50% and 56%, at least somewhat, justifying murder for Elon Musk and President Trump, respectively. Property destruction. Nearly 40% of respondents stated it at least somewhat is acceptable to destroy a Tesla dealership in protest. Psychological, ideological correlations with assassination culture. These beliefs are highly correlated with one another, as well as the justification of the murder of United Healthcare CEO and hyper-partisan left-wing ideology. That was in April. Here we are today, September 16th, 2025. Mark, your thoughts, and what is your polling and data showing?
Well, this has been a trend that's happening for years. And the major theme is that most people don't care, don't look into it. And there are very few people polling on this. I'm not sure who funds that outfit, but I'm pretty sure it's only us and them talking about political violence. It just hasn't been a thing. Because keep in mind, most of the mainstream media is actually interested in stoking political violence. And there's like evidence, anecdotal evidence. You remember back in the month between Joe Biden's horrifying debate back in June and July 13th, when Trump was assassinated, there was a period where like every news headline was about Trump's retribution candidacy and how he was going to seek revenge, and the two R words, revenge and retribution. Well, there was actually a report put out back in May by Norm Eison's outfit that talked about the increasing use of, inflammatory words like that, and how that was a major concern that needed to be met head on. And it's like the mainstream media, the mockingbird mouthpiece of the federal government establishment, said, okay, yeah, this is a good headline. Let's run with this. And for a month, you can literally see it in the Google Trends. Just go Google search trend those words. You can see the pickup in the words retribution right in anticipation of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Now, is correlation causality? I don't know, but we certainly know more about Tyler Robinson than we know about Matthew Crooks right now. And that's awfully weird considering that Trump is in charge of those federal agencies. Now, we've seen similar things. We had 27% of America, including 46%, a plurality of liberals, saying that the murder of the United Healthcare CEO by Luigi Mangione was understandable. RMG Research put out a poll that said 28% of Democrats thought it would have been better if the assassination had actually killed Donald Trump, hadn't missed. And so also, 43% of Americans think a civil war is likely in the next few years. And a majority of both Republicans and Democrats thought there would be a violent reaction to the 2024 election, regardless of which candidate won. And so the problem is that now all of a sudden you have this assassination, and it's horrifying optics. It's a complete blow to people, and it's actually changing the polling. Donald Trump's approval rating hasn't changed, but just in the last 3 days, we went from a 45% right direction down to 40%. That's a really major move. That's the lowest right direction polling of Trump's entire second term. And I think he's probably going to lose the 40 handle, which would be a really major accomplishment if he does that. And so people are looking around. I think it's a gut punch. They're saying, well, I still approve of Donald Trump, but what the heck is going on with this country? So now today I have some polling back on Charlie Kirk. We're going to have more, but this was just like an initial, let's take the temperature here. And we have 90% of Americans concerned about political violence in America, 69% somewhat. But here's the crazy thing. More Democrats are very concerned than Republicans by almost 10 points. Recently, a gunman in Utah shot and killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk. How likely is it there will be more political violence in the next few months? 85% likely, 48% very. Again, more Democrats say very likely than Republicans. Which is more to blame for these incidents? 48% say heated political rhetoric. Only 28% say availability of firearms. And then this Trump quote that he said on Fox News, agree or disagree. It's long past time for Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year in the most hateful and despicable way possible. 58% strongly agree, 28% somewhat. So that's, 84%, including a vast majority of Democrats. So you're seeing a sampling of some of the fringe Looney Tune, crazy, insane people who have been brainwashed by the cult. That's who's on TikTok. That's who's on Facebook right now, getting all of the engagement by the algorithms, probably driven by people who don't have the best interest in America. But the vast majority of Democrats are a little bit flabbergasted by this as well. And they don't want political violence either, but they've been taught that the right's going to be politically violent. And I think that people probably expect there's going to be blowback to this. Now, here's the other thing from that NCRI polling you put out. The number of people who say, again, that it's justifiable for Trump to be killed is a lot less than the number of people who say that burning Teslas is an acceptable form of protest. And we had polling that exactly prove those numbers as well. And so that's how they do this. It's been a psychological operation to radicalize these people through progressively dehumanizing their opponents with absolutely no accountability. And I think what we're going to see, and I have other arenas, Zeruska polling that we can get into, what we've been talking about is Americans increasingly want accountability. I think something like what's happened over the last week is going to increase their resolve. Look at the Greg Gutfeld monologue with Jessica Tarlov. They're done. The communication's over. Like, people don't want to hear unity because Joe Biden promised to run on unity and he shoved it in everybody's face. There was no unity, and Americans acknowledge that. 70% of people rate Joe Biden fair or poor, 52% poor on uniting America. So they're sick of all these BS lines, and that's why the mainstream media is dying. And yet you and I know that the powers that be want accelerationism.
Yes.
And so we're going to see how this all plays out.
So in my documentary, which came out in 2018, Sabotage, I opened it with a clip by Daniel Greenfield saying we're already in a civil war. And he explained that's because when the Marxist Democrats do not want to follow the rule of law or honor election results, this is a perfect example. There are varying levels of civil war, various aspects of civil war. And someone said, but Daniel, I don't see one shooting at each other. And that was back in 2018. And he said, well, shooting each other is how the Civil War ends. But it doesn't mean you're not in one. I think that the Civil War has already started. We have seen multiple conservatives, Christians, Trump supporters murdered. I mean, if we go down the line of the number of church shootings in the last few years, right? Church shootings, Christians murdered in their churches, right? That's not a love crime. That's a hate crime, or it's just crime. I'm not for a bunch of, quote, hate crime laws because that's dangerous in itself, because now we're starting to, like Pam Bondi apparently coming out talking about we're going to go after these people celebrating as a hate crime. I'm sorry, it's disgusting, but they have the freedom of speech, right? As long as they're not in calling for it or inciting it. But if they want to celebrate it, it's disgusting. It reveals who they are. But you go around prosecuted for hate speech on those kind of things, and that's a very slippery slope. But we have a long history of people committing crimes specifically against Christians or conservatives, whether it's, as I said, church shootings, whether it's transgender people shooting up and killing people because of their ideology against Christian school children and teachers, as in my state of Nashville, Tennessee, they're over in Nashville. We could just keep going. People being beat in the street that are wearing MAGA hats, right? So the violence has been going on for a while. I think it's a one-sided civil war. No one can say the violence isn't happening. It is happening. The issue is, and I'm thankful, the right is not taking the bait. It's like, what can we do to get you guys to come out in the street and fight, or to be provocative and do things so that we can label you as the domestic terrorist with your actions, as we've already done with our words? And the right's just not taking it. They're just sitting here watching this and being law-abiding. But I think the Civil War started. I just think it's one-sided. And so they're like, well, let's ratchet it up and let's take out a conservative Christian like Charlie Kirk, who everyone's saying was the nice one. You know, the nice one compared to some of these other folks that are on social media that are on the right. What say you about the fact that we're already in a shooting war? We're already in a civil war. It's just one-sided right now.
There's so much we don't know. And there's a lot of smoke to this fire here. Like, for instance, people who have alleged that a WEF-affiliated individual was running the organization out in Salt Lake City, the Salt Lake City Armed Queers, or whatever it was.
Now, what is that? You just use some initials. What does that mean?
The World Economic Forum.
Oh, the World Economic Forum. Thank you.
Yeah, apparently the individual who was running this group was affiliated with them in some way, and this is the group that went dark the second that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and may have been a group that's out there arming radical trans people. But like, the way I kind of look at it is whether these people are organized or not. Like, if it's organized, if these are calculated assassinations, obviously it's a civil war. Potentially, right? Like, these are people who are out there trying, again, to be accelerationists. But look at China. We're not in a war with China. They're our biggest trading partner. And yet at the same time, they do military drills. They're expanding their hospitals. They're, you know, having people build up blood banks and talking about retaking Taiwan. All of the while, they're providing assistance to our proxy combatant, Vladimir Putin, out over in Ukraine. And so it's like, okay, well, are we in a war or not? I don't know. They're building the infrastructure and planning for it.
Well, they're also funding. They're also funding.
Yeah.
We know the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, is funding, according to numerous experts. They are flooding the zone with money here in the U.S. for their Freedom Road socialist type groups, whatever group it might be. Good grief. We have the whole school systems in America have taken money from the CCP to put their trained agents in our schools, okay? Right. We covered this probably 4 or 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, the department, Homeland Security Committee on the Senate side was talking about these schools. They're being funded in America, $250,000 or more, with more money coming after that, with CCP people coming to America and teaching in our schools. And these people have to stay in contact with the embassies of the CCP to make sure that they're all behaving and doing their job. What were those networks called? What were those schools called? Brandon,
there was one in my learning team who had the CCP literally on his resume. And most people, young students in China, join the CCP because it's good for their career. They want to be part of the CCP. The best schools over there are the feeder schools for our best institutions. Some of those schools, apparently, according to Grok, are 30, 40, 50% CCP. And we're taking in hundreds of thousands of these people a year. And you and I both know they pay full tuition, whereas your average American that they displace do not. I guarantee that one of these people was in my learning team back in 2008 at Wharton. And so the writing has been on the wall, and we've tolerated a heck of a lot. And now you're in a situation where the Republican establishment and the Trump administration are tolerating a heck of a lot as well. Now, I think what we see on the right, you said they've been peaceful and law-abiding. I think something has changed on the right. I think people are really angry in the way that they are discussing this, as far as tolerating this and having, again, increased resolve, are very different. And I think that's a problem for Republicans because I think that they're going to demand increasingly more. There are a lot of really tough questions being asked of Kash Patel and of the Trump administration right now about how this happened and why. And I think that's a very valid question because all of these on-ramps and these communities that have been radicalizing people have all been there for a really long time. So for the 10 years where the FBI's primary issue was like domestic terrorists and they were embedding themselves in every militia and trying to entrap people into going out and kidnapping Governor Whitmer and then putting plants in the January 6th Capitol riot, and then going after like Catholic preachers who were protesting abortion clinics. All the while that was happening, they were turning a blind eye to the fact that now, like for instance, Reddit is probably completely co-opted with foreign agents, probably at the best, or, you know, George Soros radicalist plants at the worst, because nobody knows who those moderators are. 10 years ago, and again, I talk about this because Reddit is used by a lot of young people. It's where a lot of them get radicalized. And 10 years ago, it was a libertarian free speech, frontier with the biggest Trump community on the internet. And now if you went on the subreddit for basket weaving and tried to have a discussion with somebody about whether Charlie Kirk was hateful or not, your butt's going to get banned within 30 seconds. They will not allow dissent. The transgender community there is even bigger than the Christian community on Reddit, and they all think that Charlie Kirk is a hateful demon and that he got what he deserved. These are the same people that will, they literally bait them in with porn and video games, teenagers, right? And then they turn them into transsexuals. They get affiliated with Antifa. They learn hateful things about the right. And already it's been alleged that the second biggest political subreddit, again, had Ghislaine Maxwell as one of its moderators. So who are those other moderators? And I love free speech. I think we should have free speech, but there are also limits to free speech. And quite frankly, we can use legislation, executive orders, or our own intel gathering apparatus to protect Americans. Okay. What was that whole thing about the Patriot Act and recording every single communique in America so that it can be used X key score and go figure out who's plotting against us? Well, apparently none of that was ever used on leftists because we're being caught awful flat-footed. Like all this stuff that's coming out about, okay, well, this guy was living with a transsexual furry that spent all day playing video games on Discord and on Reddit and going to a lot of that's being uncovered by people on Twitter who are also asking really hard questions about how bad the story coming out of the FBI was. So at a certain point, you have to wonder, like, when is the government going to be used in the same way that the left has used it?
Well, here is,
and again, I'm not calling for illegal stuff, but
here is Senator Hawley in the hearing this morning with Kash Patel on the fact that they have over 20 groups that seem to have had foreknowledge of this assassination plot. Listen to this.
It's done in this investigation. Is the FBI investigating the Kirk assassination as part of this broader pattern of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence?
We are investigating Charlie's assassination fully and completely and running out every lead related to any allegation of broader violence, and we're producing results on that we'll disclose when appropriate.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Let me just ask you a few questions about that if I could.
Sure.
Reports have suggested that the FBI is investigating a broader network of groups that may have had some knowledge of the shooter's plans. Can you give us any details on that, following up what you already said in public? How's the FBI working to find other potential accomplices, folks who may have known about the shooter's plans, folks who may have encouraged him? Any update on any of that?
So in terms of what we do for an interrogation perspective, we go and reach out to the family and community immediately. And we've conducted those investigations and interrogations with local law enforcement, and we're continuing to do that because those closest to the suspect are going to hopefully know the most about the suspect and his beliefs and his ideology. On top of that, unfortunately, it has been leaked that there was a Discord chat, and for those unfamiliar with it, it's a gaming chat room online that the suspect participated in. So what we're doing, we've already done, is serve legal process, not just on Discord, so that the information we gathered is sustained and held in a evidentiary posture that we could use in prosecution should it be decided to do so. And we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat.
Okay, very good. I see the public reports that the Discord thread had as many as 20 additional users. It sounds like you're trying to run down all of that to see if that's accurate, who else may have been on that thread, what they may have known. Is that fair to say?
It's a lot more than that. We're running them all down.
It's a lot more than 20?
Yes, sir.
And you're running all of that to ground?
Every single one.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me just turn to the broader question here of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence. Let me just give you a few stats that I'm...
Okay, so over 20 groups are being investigated who apparently had foreknowledge that this was coming. Now,
Yeah, these groups just didn't appear out of nowhere.
no, of course
Like,
not.
how long has it been since Trump won, said he was going to declare Antifa a terrorist organization?
Now look at this. Senate report, let's go back to 2019. Senate report has slammed the Chinese learning centers operating at over 100 U.S. universities, all right? These are your Confucius Institute. And we've talked about these back in 2019 when the report came out from the Senate. And there was crickets by most people. They just didn't think it was important. But of course, we cover China pretty closely. And we were talking about brainwashing and how the Chinese brainwashed our American POWs during the Korean War. So, we were talking about this very quickly in 2019 when it came out. Then it finally started to get steam. People started realizing, we better talk about this. But you got the CCP operating on 100 U.S. university campuses. That's not counting the high schools. Now, there are people, I cannot validate this yet, but there are people that are texting me and emailing us saying that there is a friendly connection between that university where Charlie Kirk was assassinated in Utah and the CCP. Now, again, I don't know whether that's true or not. We'll do some digging and see if that's one of the universities. I don't know. But I do know that...
I'll make a bold statement. I'll make a bold statement. Foreign actors were complicit in the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
I agree.
It's just a question of who and how.
Yeah, I
Because
100% agree.
Woke ideology that poisons people, that dehumanizes their enemy, this is all being pushed by other players. And the real sad thing is, again, I don't know if this guy acted alone or not. I think he was radicalized by radical people that have embedded themselves in on-ramps for radicalization that the government appears to not have even concerned themselves with up to this point, even though an assassination almost identical to this almost happened over a little over a year ago with no answers.
You're talking about
no
President
answers
Trump,
whatsoever.
right?
Yeah, but if you look at Charlie Kirk, like the real troubling problem for America is if you were to list all of the people that could have potentially had a motive to pull this off, partly because of Biden, partly because of the Uniparty, the list is really freaking long. Like it could have been right-wing radicals, left-wing radicals, groypers, narco-terrorists, the New World Order folks. It could have been Palestine. It could have been Israel. It could have been Iran. It could have been Russia. It could have been China. It could have been MI5. It could have been literally anybody. And so the fact that, again, we're just pulling the string on the things that endanger Americans, when all of the globe is arraying itself against what has been our hegemony, is really troubling.
I agree.
And
obviously,
yeah.
Yesterday, we brought forward Bill Federer again, close friends of Charlie, who traveled with him, was friends with him, very close friends for 10 years, who was in South Korea with him the week before Charlie was assassinated. Charlie was being very bold about facing down the communists in South Korea that are taking, the lead there now and persecuting the last president and his wife. And they seem to be very well tied to China. And Bill Federer said last night, who was on that trip with Charlie and in the back room, in the green rooms and some of the meetings, that Charlie said, I have to go to Utah. But after Utah, I am going to start concentrating more on helping South Korea fight the communists. And if any of you pastors, he was specifically working with the large Christian churches and pastors, if any of you are imprisoned, I will use my influence with President Trump to help you. So again, I have to ask, why are we not looking at China? Everyone's screaming about Israel. Well, why is nobody talking about China? Okay. And what we've been laying about China and their influence in the universities and in America and their funding of these radical groups in the country, right? And if we know China is preparing for war, and we've been doing TV shows on China preparing for war with America for a long time. I think the one we did for an hour was in 2020. A whole hour on China preparing for war against the U.S. was in 2020, 5 years ago. Okay, this is not conspiracy. Our own Pentagon was admitting at the time China is preparing for war. Okay, this is fact.
Yeah.
One way you begin for war is
2004.
One way you begin to prepare for war is you are involved in what's called gray terror, which involves making sure you take down distribution of food, resources, transportation, railroad, you blow up food processing plants. Then you move on, as we saw from the own military U.S. Army document on warfare, unrestricted warfare, is you begin to be involved in political assassinations. So what I'm saying is I'm checking the boxes going, yeah, gray terror. How much of that we've seen the last few years, right? Food plants, egg plants, railroads, chemicals. I mean, it's nonstop. Gray terror, boom. Now political assassinations, check. Funding of radical, extremist, anti-American revolutionary groups in the street calling for violence, check. I mean, how much more do we have to say? Okay, I'm putting a big spotlight on China. Okay, now, yes, you can add in the other groups that we're talking about, but we know for a fact, and then you add in the red-green axis, Iran. Now you got the two groups together. And most Americans, again, I think are being distracted by the LGBTQ trans furry crowd. I think that is not the main player. They are the camouflage. We have to get to who was really behind it. Agree or disagree?
Well, it's a destabilization play, like they've destabilized everything. They've economically destabilized America. They've destabilized the family. They have some control over entertainment, although, again, it's not ubiquitously China. I think that China works with our other adversaries in a way that is, they're obviously our biggest, what's the word? We're going up against them the most, but they just use every system against us. You and I both know why we're not going after China. And I want to highlight, I was a nuclear submariner. We had more missiles pointed at China than any other place, and I'm pretty sure it's probably the same, but they're our number one trading partner. And what happens the second that Trump takes any aggressive stance toward China, period whatsoever, the phones melt down in the Senate. That's what happens. Every single person that's donated $1 to a Republican senator calls up and says, what on earth are you doing? This is tanking my stock. Do you want your economy to implode? The whole system's coming crashing down. And so we've put ourselves in a situation through complacency and, quite frankly, probably greed, where we are literally incapable of decoupling from the people that want us gone the most. And China doesn't want to invade America. China wants Americans shooting each other. And so this is obviously like part of that playbook. Now, the problem I see, though, in the near term is that the right has been very tolerant. I don't know. What's the word? Not complacent.
Passive. Apathetic.
Passive is the right word.
And passive.
Willing to allow Trump to do the heavy lifting for them. And we talked a lot about the political violence polling. The one bit of polling that concerns me, have to be very specific about when this was taken. This was taken September 10th. Our very first sample was 3 hours after Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. So some people had heard about it, some people hadn't. But this polling was specifically about the Charlotte murder of the Ukrainian refugee Irina Zerutska. And that image was seen by 62% of America. Like almost everybody has seen that picture of her being horribly murdered on the light rail train. And one of the questions that I think is an important benchmark is whether people support capital punishment or not. And so that question really tells you a lot about a human, their level of compassion, understanding, empathy, their morality, the way they think about justice. And we asked that about 5 years ago, and the death penalty won 49% to 36%. So by 13 points. And we just asked it whether Carlos Brown should be executed, and it's 60-20. So it went from plus 13 to plus 40. This is a major shift in the way Americans think about justice. The death penalty for this guy, and granted, he was a young black guy. And there has not been a lot of information about his background. Like the default position you would assume for these people is like, oh, well, systematic racism or whatever, right? Democrats want him executed 48 to 28. So that's plus 20. They went from underwater on the death penalty to plus 20 on the death penalty for this guy. Republicans, it's 76 to 11, so it's plus 65. And independents, it's plus 40. Everybody who's seen the picture, it's 73% to 14. So massive and overwhelming demand for capital justice. And you and I both know it's going to take 20 years. Now you got Luigi Mangione, you got DeCarlos Brown. You're going to have Tyler Robinson, assuming he doesn't get the Epstein treatment. And then you have basically zero accountability for the Butler assassination. The guy got his, brains pink misted, but there has been no accountability, especially out of the Secret Service, which we now find has Charlie Kirk, people cheering for the Charlie Kirk assassination in it. How does that still happen? How is there anyone left in the Secret Service? Like, don't we want there to be zero more assassination attempts on Donald Trump? And yet we have ideologues who think that Charlie Kirk was hateful and deserved death in the Secret Service and at every level of our military and at every other institution that services Americans. Are they the majority of people? No, but they're still there.
Well, you bring up a very good point. The cancer that is inside the federal government. Here is fitting with that, I think, very interesting conversation between Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa today and FBI Director Kash Patel about the FBI. Watch and listen.
Central American gangs like MS-13. Now, it's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics. I'm going to provide examples of that today, including making public new whistleblower records. At your nomination hearing, I made public records that whistleblowers provide me about Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by antitrust Trump FBI agent Thibault.
All right, I want to make sure the audience understands him. Arctic Frost, opened by anti-Trump FBI guys. Arctic Frost, opened by the FBI. What was Arctic Frost about? Listen.
Arctic Frost then became Jack Smith's elector case against then Citizen Trump and now President Trump. These new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. The case was expanded to Republican organizations.
All right, so Arctic Frost went from just concentrating on Donald Trump to concentrating on Republican organizations.
Some examples of the group that Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorney General's Association, and various Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA.
So the FBI was targeting Charlie Kirk. Are you shocked, Americans? Are you shocked now that you have more questions than answers about not only the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, but the successful assassination of Charlie Kirk? Because I'm telling you, this government is running itself. The shadow government, the power elite, they run themselves. If you don't believe me, then ask yourself, how is it that the IRS is running today? How is the IRS running and operating today? Because guess what? The IRS commissioner lasted only a few weeks, Billy Long. Yeah. And he went to become the ambassador to Iceland. Who is running the IRS today? The Treasury Secretary. Wait a minute. This man can run the IRS with tens upon tens of thousands of employees and buildings and oh my. And then the Treasury Department? You can run both of those? No, you cannot. You can barely run one of these government agencies. They're run by civil servants, many of them who are hardcore leftist, cultural Marxists. Many of them now have infiltrated that I think are Islamist.
Yep.
So if you don't think that this government if you think this government is run by Trump and his people, you don't understand. President Trump didn't have control of his own government in his first term. He doesn't have full control of this government in this term.
That's true. 100%.
Let me continue and then I'll have you comment on. Yep. Let me continue and then we'll let you comment on all of this.
In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. So today, Senator Johnson and I are making these records public for the entire country to see, and I hope a lot of people are interested in seeing what government can do when various agencies have a political agenda. My investigative work has also exposed the political way in which Peter Navarro was investigated and prosecuted. When FBI agent Thibault found out that Biden's DOJ would prosecute Navarro, he said, "Wow, great." That's a quote, unquote. Through whistleblowers, I've obtained a audio recording of Special Agent Giagardina and Special Agent Sebastian Gardner's delivery of a subpoena to Navarro. I'm making that audio public today. In a court document filed by the Department of Justice.
All right, we'll stop it there. Respond to all this, please, Mark.
What it comes down to is that I feel like the Trump administration doesn't understand accountability or doesn't have the will to go through what accountability is.
Or they're afraid. They're afraid. Do you not think that at some level this president hasn't been threatened? He was on July 13th. Do you not think at some level? I mean, wasn't it Glenn Beck that came out? Logan, can you find the clip? Logan, can we find the clip? Wasn't it Glenn Beck that came out and said he was called into the Oval Office by George W. Bush and told, hey, look, this is how it works? Can you find that clip?
They got to talk.
Did you hear that? Did you hear about that, Mark?
No, but I mean, it just makes sense. I think all of DC operates on a little secret talk about how things work here and how you're not supposed to buck the status quo. Voters said only 30% of them trusted the federal government. And then they voted for Trump and he got a mandate. And what I've been saying is you can't just take a corrupt organization like, for instance, the FBI, where 53% of people thought the FBI was Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. You can't take that organization and then automatically put a new person at the head and expect everybody to all of a sudden forget that it was an organization, that it was a Gestapo. And the problem is that, like, it would almost be better if Trump was using the FBI as his Gestapo, because then people at least would have some recourse. I didn't like the way the FBI worked under Biden. Let's see how it works under Trump. Well, from all intents and purposes, it looks like it's still operating as if it were under Biden.
That's exactly
right.
Because
what does it look like when an organization gets overhauled? I've seen it. I did a cleanup on a 100-person team at Walmart. It's a lot of work. You have to talk to a lot of people. You have to understand what drives them, change the culture, fire the cancerous ones, hire new ones. And the way it has to be done rapidly, I thankfully had time. If you're going to do it rapidly, it's going to look something like what happened when Elon Musk bought Twitter. What did he do? He fired 80% of the workforce, and it was touch and go on a daily basis about whether that website worked or not. And so until Trump, and I've been saying this is accountability. You have to show people that the government has been restored to proper functioning. And what we're finding more and more is that it's still functioning incorrectly. And there comes a point where people will not accept it. And I don't know what that point is. But what I'm saying is this week we took a really big step down a path that's different than the path of Donald Trump will fix this. And so Donald Trump's window is closing until we see major firings, major investigations, root cause corrective action, agencies being shut down. With the political capital that Trump has now after this assassination and the majorities he has in control of the government, my question for you would be, what would Democrats do in this situation? They would do something probably entirely different than what we're seeing out of Republicans. And so again, Donald Trump doesn't even control the Republicans. Those organizations are still hopelessly corrupt. Where can voters turn if they have no redress for their grievances?
Golly, exactly. Where can they? Listen to what Glenn Beck said. Listen to this, guys.
Election. I went to the White House because I was called on the carpet by George W. Bush because I was not happy with the war and the way it was going. And I had made some comment about, I don't remember even what it was, but I made some comment on the air that, hey, left, you want to impeach him? Here's the thing you impeach him on, because this is actually impeachable. And that didn't sit well with the Bush administration. They didn't like that. And I get a call on the way home from the studios, and it's the White House. And this is the first time the White House had ever called me without me reaching out first. And I get a call, and it's a 202 number, and I'm like, it's 1414. 202, I can't remember, 458 or something, 1414. And I remember 202, that's Washington, D.C., and 1414, I remember that's the number of the White House. And I look at it for a while, and I'm like, I think that's the White House. And I pick it up. Mr. Beck? Yes? The president would like to see you in the Oval tomorrow morning at 10. Now, I'm on the air at 10 o'clock in the morning. Do you think you could make that? I didn't even know what to say. I literally held the phone away from my head, and I looked at I'm driving, and I look at the phone, and I look at the road, and I don't even know what to say. And I just, I said, well, hang on, let me check. Let me check. And I put the phone back up next to my ear, and I'm like, okay, looks good. Yeah, I can be there. Hang up the phone. It was freaky. I get there, and the first thing the president says, I sit in the chair, in the Zelensky chair, and the first thing the president says to me is, and laced with profanity, a lot of people think they know how they can be the effing president. Well, they have no effing idea how to be the effing president. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the longest hour of my life. And he read me the riot act. After that was all over and he had that out of his system, we stood up at the end, and it was the day that Barack Obama had said that if he were president, he would just fly our planes over the border into Pakistan, and he would just bomb Pakistan. Well, this is at the point where Pakistan is kind of helping us. Okay, they're not our friends; they're more frenemies, but they're kind of helping us at this point. And he says, Barack Obama says, and if he would have done that, the whole coalition of the willing, all of that crap would have gone right out the window. And so I said to the president as I'm walking out, and he's standing by the Oval or by the Resolute desk, and I said, Mr. President, I said, I don't know if you heard this, but today, Barack Obama, and he said, oh, I heard that. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. And I said, okay. And he said, trust me, Glenn, whoever comes into this office, no matter what party they're in, they're going to sit behind this desk. And they're going to realize, because they're going to be advised by exactly the same people that have been advising me, that they really have no choice. This is what they have to do. And he said, have a good day. And I'm like, holy cow. I walked out, and do you remember me calling you after that, Stu?
Yes.
And I was freaked out. I was like, this is not good. The president isn't really the president. The president is just listening to all these advisors who were advising the last president and the president before that, and it's all State Department stuff. And they're just They're just executing a long plan. What difference does it make who we have in the office if that's true?
Yeah,
Remember that?
One specific part of that you didn't mention was because he was very angry at you, but that part of the conversation was meant to make you feel good, right?
Yes.
It wasn't like an angry thing. It was a, hey, it's okay, calm down. All the decisions will remain the same. And it's like, that didn't calm you down much.
No, it made it worse.
Yes.
And so why do I bring this story up, which I've told before? Why do I bring this story up? I bring this story up because when Donald Trump sat at the table and said, just going to get old Vlad on the phone, and he stands up, walks out of the room with all the world leaders, and he just picks up the phone and calls Vladimir Putin and says, hey, I just want to keep you up to speed of what's going on. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't have anybody whispering in his ear. He's leading the State Department. He's leading the world. He's keeping his own counsel. That hasn't been done by a president in I don't know how long. And it's why we're once again the leaders of the world.
Well, first of all, I don't know that I would agree with that assumption. I don't think he's making the decisions. And I think that's one reason, in my opinion, why he flip-flops on things. He says something and then he goes back on it. He says something and goes back on it. Is that because he wants to do this, but then he's told, no, you're not going to do it, and so he has to change course? I don't know. But number two, we are not the leaders of the world. This is the 1980s mentality these people have got to get over, okay? We are not the leaders of the world. We can't even run our own federal government.
Yeah.
We have the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and all these other nations rushing together to de-dollarize the world. The only thing that's really made us strong has been our military, our values, and our economy. And we've lost our values. Our economy is in the toilet. We're upside down. Banks are holding derivatives, which are an absolute weapon of destruction. And you have the dollar being destroyed so quickly, and our purchasing power, and our military is nothing what it should be, as China and Russia are under 5th and 6th generation warfare technology. And we still have commentators that think we're ruling and leading the world. Baloney. But I wanted to play that to show you that apparently it didn't matter that Obama was coming in next. He'll be getting the same advice from the people I get it from on how things are going to happen. This is what many presidents have referred to as the power elite. Mark?
Yeah. Back in January, I mean, even before that, I've said Washington, D.C. is occupied territory by the uniparty kleptocracy, this unholy alliance of global homo corporations, the World Economic Forum, our biggest foreign adversaries, NATO and its expansionist thirst for blood, for the blood of my kids. And let me say this to George W. Bush, you treasonous piece of crap, to sit there and acknowledge to one of the biggest conservative influencers that he knows this is not a representative democracy. This is literally an autocracy of the DC elite. And it was like that then, and it's still the same now. Now, what blows my mind is, like, Brandon, can you imagine just turning back our culture to just what it was during Bush's administration? The social cohesion, the better people could still trust institutions, the better economic outlook, the much less fragmented society, a lot lower levels of violent rhetoric. I mean, this is like, they ubiquitously voted for the war in Iraq. Remember, Cindy Sheehan was like the biggest problem we had back then. It's just utterly mind-blowing. And for the freaking intel apparatus to screw it all up by dabbling in the Middle East, putting us in a situation where we encumbered ourselves with, I think, what was probably, I mean, the first domino to fall in what has become a dying empire. And now Donald Trump, I don't know what's going on there. I think Donald Trump is very well informed. I think he's an intuitive leader, and he makes decisions, snap decisions based on a limited set of information. And if he finds new information, he's going to change his mind. That's strong leadership. But obviously something's not clicking, because you look at what happens again with Kash Patel. And the second he gets in charge of the FBI, it's all sunshine and roses about how they're focused on the right things now, even though there have been no firings, no root cause corrective actions, no exposés put out or any reports filed about how it was focused on the wrong things and it's now focused on the right things. And we see all of the signs of still things going in the wrong direction. Why are we still fighting a proxy war with Russia? Why have we not done anything against China? Why are we the influences still rule Washington, D.C. And now I know it and you know it, that this system cannot fix itself. The only question remains, well, when will the majority of Americans who are willing to take radical action know it? And I don't have an answer to that, but it feels like it's coming. And unfortunately, we look like we're on the wrong path right now. A messy fourth turning. I don't know how else this gets fixed. And is that civil war? Is that revolution? Impossible to predict. It all comes down to like who is willing to push the farthest. And I guess we're going to see.
And I will close with this. And I think you agree with me. We'll find out. What makes Charlie Kirk's assassination different than a political assassination is that Charlie Kirk was a self-described evangelical Christian. Big time self-described evangelical Christian, defending the Bible, promoting the gospel. People come to Christ, study the Bible, pray, put Christ first, right? And we had on Reddit people saying, as you point out in one of your feeds, don't show it because it has the F word in it. This is the most dangerous thing the U.S. has seen. Insane, well-armed evangelicals pushing for control of their government, electing rapists and child molesters. Here's another one. I feel you. I also think the Christian Taliban is getting out of control and has too much power. This was not as much of a political assassination as it was, I believe, a religious Christian evangelical assassination. And I think Christians should be very aware of the fact that it's not just conservatives being hunted, it is Christians, evangelical, Bible-believing Christians that are going to be hunted. They are being hunted. And I hate to say it, so are many Jewish people who think what we will of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli government, but we have Jews in America that are being hunted in their own synagogues, all right? Why is it that Jews and Christians get hunted by the left?
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. He did not get murdered because of the words he spoke were offensive. He got murdered because the people who murdered him wanted his words to be offensive. There are two predominant worldviews here at war. The worldview of traditional Western Christianity, the Logos and the classical liberalism based on Judeo-Christian values that has allowed our representative democracy to flourish. That's worldview one. Worldview two is, like you said, this like disgusting mix of postmodernist, Marxist, and I'll add in there globo homo, degenerate, everything goes, moral relativism, acceptance, not repentance. Like that is the other worldview. Now, I can tell you it's a minority. It's a growing minority, but it is the vast minority. And so the real question is what recourse does the majority have now that it understands that maybe it's beginning to understand that no help is coming unless something radically changes? And I just don't know, but it's not going anywhere well. And certainly you can see that the rhetoric is about as violent as it gets, and that puts us in a dangerous situation.
Yep.
It would appear that Donald Trump's going to continue to keep sending National Guard troops to blue cities. Well, how far do they push resistance? What happens?
We've already heard the mayor of Chicago talk about that.
Yeah.
We had a guy. Did we play? Yeah. We had a guy last night, a Hispanic guy we played last night with my Man on the Street interview in Memphis Friday. We played last night talking about if you send your National Guard here, and he got up and he threw his hat down, dropping the F-bomb. I mean, some of these people I think are going to go to arms with the National Guard.
It could happen. It could absolutely happen. Or even like what happens if, one of the scenarios I came up with was we have a Democrat governor harboring an illegal alien, Murphy in New Jersey. He's come out and said that he's going to keep doing it and resist the federal government. Well, Homan could send ICE there. What's he going to do with the state troopers? Like, what's going to happen? And I think that we're going to find people criminally accountable. And I also think that we have an impending. This gets to rumor, but there's reasons to believe that accountability for election fraud is coming. And that maybe finally some of this information that people have been collecting, some of these depositions, some of this actual evidence is going to find its way to grand juries. Can't say more than that. I don't know much more than that, but I think it is happening because I think it's one of the things on Donald Trump's punch list that absolutely had to happen.
Which Mark, if they cannot do a revolution through voting, then they must do a revolution other ways, and they must do a revolution that maybe stops more stuff from coming out and going forward.
That's right. That's right. It's gonna start happening fast, and I have no idea what it looks like. But this is what happens at the end of fourth turnings. So,
well, he'll be with us. He'll be with us in person Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Roll up the graphic there, guys. Gordon Chang, expert on the CCP. Mark Mitchell, Hadia Miramonde, who was meeting face-to-face with Gaddafi. I mean, what a time to be at our conference. Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Yes, we have security. We have everybody from the police chief down in our town that's talked with me, and they want us to have a great time and be safe, and this is a safe community. Someone's like, I didn't realize this was in Memphis, one of our speakers. Or I didn't realize how Memphis was so dangerous. I'm like, I don't live in Memphis. The conference isn't in Memphis. Now, if you want to go to Orange Mound, good luck. I hope you make it out. If you want to go over to, some Fraser, good luck. I hope it goes well for you. But we're not holding our conference in Orange Mound in Fraser. We're not even in Memphis. We are in Collierville, Tennessee. Collierville, Tennessee, a very nice, safe community. They had 1,000 people on the town square Sunday night. 1,000. If it was so dangerous, do you think 1,000 people would have brought out their lawn chairs for a vigil for Charlie Kirk? No. This is a safe community, okay? So don't be scared to come to Collierville, okay? Come and join us. Don't let the liberals win, the progressives, the Marxists, the trans terrorists. Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Get your ticket. Be with us the Thursday night optional concert banquet Thursday night with a keynote address by Hadia as well. Now, if you can't be with us in person, you can watch it online if you have a membership at any level. Worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. And then I want you to go and follow Mark Mitchell on his X account right there, @HonestPolster, @HonestPolster. Big news tonight. Senator Chuck Grassley says the whistleblower has documented Arctic Frost, a group inside the FBI, to track conservative Christian Republican groups and organizations that included Charlie Kirk's. Do not think for 1 minute, folks, your own government was not complicit in some way in the murder of Charlie Kirk, just as they were, I think, involved in the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. You agree?
Let's get some accountability. Show me a list of every investigation that was happening and a list of every investigation that's happening now. You can keep them confidential or whatever, but let's just see it. What's changed? And I think it probably won't be much.
Nope. All right. Look forward to having you back and, of course, having you in person October 3rd and 4th. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Thank you. Great to be here.
You too, my friend. We'll be right back after this break. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHousebg.com.